TV dramas portray a lot of different workplaces, and in this episode, we thought it would be fun to imagine what it would be like to work in some of those places if you're not a main character, and what lessons you can learn from how work is portrayed on our screens. Some serious, some lighthearted, but all of them tell us something interesting about the world of work. Welcome to the Gen XZ Exchange. I'm Chris Perkins, Gen X parent, now 50-something empty nester.
And I'm Lily Perkins, Gen Z career explorer. We swap insights on career choices, work and life in general.
So whether you're a Gen X parent trying to figure out midlife's challenges,
or a Gen Z young professional or student figuring out adulthood, you're in the right place.
So this was a topic suggested by Mum, who, as we know, is a connoisseur of quality television. So she sets the bar pretty high. So Lily, what would you say are the top shows of all time that you've enjoyed?
I think, first of all, saying that she's like the connoisseur of quality television is a reach, but I'll let you go away with that one.
Okay.
But anyways, I've probably watched a lot of TV over the years, so it is definitely a tricky one to narrow it down. But I know that I like a gritty kind of drama, so I would say probably Breaking Bad, The Sopranos, and then more recently, and very on topic for today, Severance. But I also like stuff like Arrested Development and both of Nathan Fielder's shows when I want something a bit more lighthearted and a bit of a laugh. What about you?
That's interesting that you say Breaking Bad. That's one of my favourites.
Yeah.
I've got to say, I love a middle-aged man's descent from normality into some very dark places. Don't know why, but just seem to be able to relate to that. So my absolute all-time favourites would be Mad Men, Breaking Bad, and Ozark, which is Jason Bateman from Arrested Development.
Nice.
But also, I love The Office, the UK version, and we'll talk about that. Line of Duty, I thought was brilliant, and Schitt's Creek, which was like a family show for us. I think that got us through lockdown.
Through the dark ages. Yeah.
And probably loads more that I can't think of right now. So how about if we pick a show that at least one of us can talk about, and we'll just rattle through as many as we can in the time that we've got.
Yeah, quick fire. That sounds good.
So given that we're talking about workplaces, we've really got to start with the classic, The Office. I know you're a fan of the US version. Yeah. I've never really seen that, but I can talk about the original UK version.
Cool.
And for me, it's just a masterclass in how to be a totally unself-aware, narcissistic leader. Someone who thinks he's so cool, but is just so cringe. How not to create a strong workplace culture or manage your team. And I would say the biggest learning is don't ever show off your dance moves at work.
There goes my 5-year plan for getting up the career ladder. I was just going to go and do loads of dancing. But with me, I definitely prefer the US Office, actually, because I really can't stand Ricky Gervais. I don't know what it is. He just does my head in. But I think I have watched some of the UK Office as well, and I think both his and Steve Carell's characters are obviously terrible bosses, but I think with Michael Scott, he's actually quite endearing, and I still get the sense he's like a good person underneath all of his craziness. I can't really say the same for David Brent, but maybe I'm just biased because of my personal thing.
I don't think David Brent is a good person underneath.
No.
I think he's like totally mixed up.
Yeah, I think Michael Scott's still got this kind of like endearing quality about him. I think he still is a good person, even if it maybe doesn't come out like perfectly right all the time. So yeah, I may be biased because I don't like Ricky Gervais, but that's just my opinion on it. So what about one of your favourite dramas?
I would say one of my all-time favourites was Mad Men.
Yeah.
Super cool styling and production. It's absolutely gorgeous to watch for all of that mid-century stuff. And I did actually learn something useful from watching this that I used to use at work. So when Don Draper's creative team would pitch a concept to him, he would almost always challenge them by saying, "What's the strategy?" And when I first worked in employer brand agencies, I always asked myself that question to road test if we were on the right lines. Right?
Yeah,
just a really
good.
Useful kind of sense check.
Check-in.
Plus, I also always wished I had one of Don's confident and mysterious lines ready for any challenge to the strategy, but I couldn't quite pull that off.
Yeah, I think unfortunately when most people try to pull off the cool, confident, mysterious vibe that they see in TV, they maybe wind up looking a bit more like a David Brent or a Michael Scott than a Don Draper. So
Yes.
I feel like we would maybe fall into that category, me with my dancing and you just with your dadness. So there we go.
Yeah, very difficult to pull off. In terms of drama, Line of Duty is also a standout, top-notch, suspenseful British drama. You know, I thought about joining the police after school.
Really? Oh, wait, I think you told me that before, yeah.
And that's because I used to watch an 80s police show called The Bill, which is more a soap opera than what actual police work is like. But I think Line of Duty shows you that there can be corruption and rule breaking where you least expect it. You know, people that are supposed to be really good and uphold the law, and the politics and all the moral ambiguity is just a nightmare for them in what they're doing.
Yeah.
I think I don't know if you've ever seen it. Have you ever watched it?
No, I kind of get the gist though. I've heard you and Mum talking about it. I think I might have seen snippets over dinner when I've been home.
Yeah, so one of the classic scenes that I think everyone maybe can't relate to, but I think at some point everyone has sat in a really horrible meeting at some point and wishes they could text urgent exit required, like Dot did, to get busted out, except you'd want to do that without the automatic weapons. But it's an incredible scene.
No, that sounds cool. I feel like I need to watch that because I've heard you and Mum rave about it so much. But since we're on the topic of cop shows, slightly on the lighter side, one that I can relate to, one that I have seen, is Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which I haven't watched in a while, but it was my favourite show in high school. I think I binged it quite a bit when I was like doing my exams and stuff. And it's quite similar to the US Office with its like silliness, but also how throughout it, like the characters evolve from their kind of rigid archetypes and you get really attached to them because of that. Like that's quite a common thing in comedy, I think, or at least it makes for a good comedy. And then another show that had me really, really attached to the characters recently, like I was talking about, was Severance. So that's probably also my favourite like work related show that we've got on our list, because it's like the worst imaginable workplace drama ever had a baby with a Black Mirror episode. So you can properly sink your teeth into it. It's a bit crazy. Really interesting look at like work, capitalism, tech, authority, all that good stuff. And I think I've explained it to you before. I think I've tried to show it to you.
Yeah, and I've watched a few episodes based on your recommendation, and it sounds like exactly my kind of thing. Just need to find the time to watch it.
For anyone listening who doesn't know, they basically invent this chip that separates your brain into like they call it your innie self, so that's your workplace self, and your outie regular person outside of work self, and neither of these versions of you are aware of each other. So innies don't know who they are or what they get up to outside of work, and vice versa. You have no memory of your life outside of work or in work. And when you Google it, Gemini says that the show explores the dangers of extreme work-life separation and the ethical nightmare of dehumanising the workforce for corporate convenience. So, yeah, very juicy. Would you consider switching off completely from your work self? Because I feel like it sounds nice on paper, but from what I've seen in the show, it's definitely not all it's cracked up to be.
I think the idea of being able to switch off your work self is a really interesting one, because a lot of people kind of take work home either physically, although maybe less so now we work from home, but it can be hanging over you. You know, you're thinking about work outside of hours. And I know you have been in some of your jobs, you know, and be contacted outside of working hours about changing shifts and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah. But this idea that your work life and your non-work life are completely separate. I don't think you can completely separate them, but it would be nice to perhaps have a bit of a break and switch off. I don't know if that means like, you know, switching on the microchip. I'm not sure I'd be up for that.
Yeah, you would think it would be nice, but I'm going to get you to watch the rest of the show, so then you can make your mind up once you've seen it all.
Cool.
But anyways, what have we got next on our list?
Well, one for Mum, another comedy, Parks and Recreation. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah, I have actually. I watched a few episodes a wee while ago, yeah.
Mum spent her career in the public sector, most of it in local government, which is where this is set. I think what stands out in this one is that with passion and persistence, you can genuinely make a difference, which is what most people in the public sector are trying to do, even in the most bureaucratic and under-resourced environments, which is generally what the public sector is like. And again, really interesting characters. It's a great example of a diverse team actually coming together because they've all got this shared goal in terms of parks and
making
recreation.
Things better. Oh.
So that was a good one.
I need to watch it.
You've worked in hospitality. Have you ever watched The Bear?
Mum's trying to get me to watch it. This is another one of Mum's faves. I think I've seen a bit of the first season, but I couldn't really get into it. But she said I just need to persist and watch the second season when it becomes a bit more personal or something.
Yeah, for you and Peter, it might be like a bit too close to home in terms of like it's set in a restaurant. I've only really watched it kind of accidentally when I've sort of walked in, Mum's watching it, but pretty much every time that happens, it's just mesmerizing. Whatever is going on screen is kind of compulsive viewing. It's about a guy who takes over his brother's sandwich shop in Chicago after his brother dies by suicide, and turns it into a fine dining restaurant. And apparently it's a very real representation of what working in what a high-end kitchen is like. And the pressure just looks relentless. And Carmy, the main character, goes from Michelin-starred restaurants in New York to turn around this little place in Chicago. So it's a real tale of back to basics. And it is so intense. It's a really high pressure watch. It can make you quite uncomfortable watching it. One of the scenes that stopped me in my tracks was the Christmas dinner scene in season 2. It just unbelievable.
I need to watch season 2 then. I need to power through.
Well, I would start at season 1 and then you kind of get all the backstory as to all the family dynamics going on at the dinner. I think from a work perspective, it shows you how impeccable your communication needs to be in that kind of high pressure environment. And in a kitchen, there really has to be a clear hierarchy of like who does what to make it work. And you have to be such a fast learner to keep pace. And obviously that applies in all sorts of workplaces at the moment, the way kind of things are changing. I think, as you said, that the second series, Carmy's dealing with much more of his grief and things in his personal life. And it's a really interesting study in how being a bit more vulnerable, like we spoke about in the friendship episode, can really open up relationships at work and in your personal life in a really positive way. Yeah,
definitely. It sounds nice. And I've never worked in a kitchen in a high-end restaurant, but some of the restaurants I've done front of house and have been quite swanky, and it's definitely very, very intense. And the moments that you can like bond with your co-workers over the intensity and maybe get a bit more vulnerable at stuff, that's what gets you through. If we're talking about going back to basics as well, then let's look back round to Schitt's Creek.
Yeah, that was a
like
fun
we
watch.
We're saying a little walk down memory lane to lockdown. It was a nice distraction from all of the carnage. So to set the scene, the very wealthy Rose family suddenly lose everything. And their only remaining asset is a little town called Schitt's Creek, where they have to move and start running the local motel. I can't remember why. Did they buy it as like a joke?
The dad had bought the whole town for the son as a joke, but because he was defrauded out of everything, the town wasn't in his name, it's in David's name, the son. So that's the only thing they had left. So that was the premise of it. So
the message within the show was about personal growth and transformation, because each of the characters definitely have to eat a lot of humble pie, and they kind of have to reinvent themselves along the way after losing everything and losing the life that they knew of luxury and glamour. But eventually it does bring the family closer together than when they had all of their wealth. And they also come to love running a community-based business. So it's kind of similar to what I was saying about The Office and Brooklyn Nine-Nine. These are all comedies where you grow really, really fond of the characters because they develop so much through the show, and it happens quite subtly in between all the laughs and all the silliness. If you compare them in the last season to the first season, there's a really nice transformation.
It does, but you're really rooting for them, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly.
You really want it to all come good.
To work
they
out.
Sort of make their peace with what happened and actually kind of grow to love where they've ended up and are probably happier together there than when they were super wealthy.
Yeah.
So for Life Turned Upside Down, I have to talk about Ozark.
Yeah.
Is another one of my favourite shows. So straight-laced financial advisor Marty Bird gets himself into a nasty situation with a Mexican drug cartel due to some very bad choices that his business partners made. Has to move his family very quickly from Chicago to Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri, right in the middle of the states, and launder ever-increasing sums of money from the cartel just to stay alive. Now, one business lesson I got from this is I actually know how to launder money now. So it goes into such depth about what he's doing, shell companies and everything else. If I ever had to launder money for a Mexican drug cartel, I think I could.
Edit that out in case you get yourself into any business bother. They're going to have like a trail back to this episode. I was about to say, you certainly watch a lot, like you were saying at the start about normal guy who ends up down this path of like criminality and destruction.
Like Breaking Bad. Yeah.
I think you're secretly plotting something, but I'll just keep that to myself. Yeah. Whatever.
Right. For all you know, I could have a meth lab here or be laundering money.
Yep. Well, hopefully not, because I don't want this traced back to me. So we'll cut this.
So I was watching this show during a very difficult time for me at work a few years ago, and one of my work friends was also watching it at the same time, and we were both on a project with a nightmare client that had just gone horribly wrong, and our catchphrase during that time was, "What would Marty do?" He had got himself into so many desperate life or death situations, but survived with his quick thinking. And it was just a kind of salvation for us at the time.
Yeah.
And I have to say, although he is the main character, Ozark is actually about very, very strong women. It's a really good watch for all the women characters. So Marty's wife, Wendy, is fantastic. Ruth, who's part of the local crime family. It was Julia Garner's big break when she really came to prominence. They're both amazing. And then Darlene, Helen, the lawyer, Maya, the FBI agent. They're all fantastic characters.
That's another one I'm going to have to watch if it's jam-packed with girl bosses. Love that.
Yeah, definitely. So what else for you, Lily?
This is another kind of silly one, and it does relate to work, but in a kind of parody way. Because I think I've brought up Nathan for You to you before. It's Nathan Fielder, the comedian, TV guy. He basically goes around all these real life businesses owned by real people, and he has these crazy, outlandish, ridiculous schemes that he like thinks is going to bring them more business. So like there's one episode that comes to mind where he goes to a horseback riding place and invents this device that attaches massive helium balloons to overweight people so they can ride the horses without being over the weight limit for the horses. So in theory that opens up a whole new demographic of customers. And there's another episode called Ghost Realtor where he gets a real estate lady to hire someone he's like a crazy guy who does exorcisms, and he goes around this house that she's selling, and I can't really remember exactly, but it's something like if you have these houses cleansed of all the spirits, they'll sell for more, like it's a selling point. But the funny thing with that episode is the lady totally goes along with it because she turns out to be really spiritual and into all of her ghost spooky stuff. So she ends up being like fully into the whole exorcism thing and like gets cleansed of a demon herself and all this stuff. So one of the funniest things about that show is how reluctant or willing the business owners are to take Nathan up on his crazy ideas. Some people are so like standoffish and like not up for it at all, whereas other people like the ghost lady are like, yep, sure, sounds great. So,
yeah, and he is so wacky. I would imagine he can convince a lot of people that's like, yeah, let's do this. This is going to transform your business.
And then even for the people that aren't into it, he's like, well, we're doing it anyways. So I don't really know what the workplace lesson is there. I guess he did an episode about if you're confident, you can land the job or whatever. So maybe it's just his confidence and his ridiculous schemes.
Maybe. And the fact that sometimes the kind of the wacky idea can be the real winner. You've got to kind of take a chance. Yeah. And then I guess he, just as a little aside, he revisited the real estate stuff in The Curse. The thing with
loved that show.
Emma Stone. I mean, that was mental. One of the most mental shows I think I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It's actually a really frustrating watch because the characters are all so unlikable. but you have to... Did you watch it all the way to the end?
Yeah, I did. Remember we spoke about it because as you said to me so many times, you will never, ever, ever guess the ending. And I was like, yeah, whatever, like challenge accepted. But
no spoilers.
No spoilers at all. But you were right. It was truly something that I never would have been able to come up with.
Yeah, you have to stick with it to the end because it is the most crazy end to anything I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But to go back to what you were saying about confidence, I think one of the best examples of that is Suits. It's another one of Mum's favourite shows from years ago. So college dropout with a photographic memory, Mike, gets hired to join a top law firm, but pretends he's a Harvard law graduate.
Yeah.
Now, Harvey, the hotshot lawyer who hires him, knows this and hires him because he's a bit of a risk taker, and he sees Mike as another me who can keep up with him because he's quite unconventional in terms of his approach to the law. So lots of thrills and spills, high-profile cases during their climb to the top, and kind of proof that actually sometimes just having confidence and a very polished image and being a quick thinker is often all you need, rather than having to have the right qualifications or credentials. But you will get caught out at some point. Salutary
Or you
tale.
will be Meghan Markle and you will marry the prince.
Maybe, yeah.
So just depends what way you spin it, to be honest. I'm wanting more of the silver lining positive mindset than the getting caught out one. But
Cool.
do with that what you will. Have we got any others in our list to go through?
I think for working in a family business, the top show has to be Succession.
Yep.
So toxic family all working together and pitted against each other inevitably leads to an even more toxic workplace. There's a big lesson here about looking after your health, especially if you're in a very intensive work environment. And it is the ultimate in office politics, seeing a family turn on each other. And if they'd just been able to work more collaboratively, it all could have turned out so much better.
I've worked for a couple of family businesses, and particularly in hospitality, that's something that I would never do again because, it does feel like you're in an episode of Succession. But after all the doom and gloom, let's pick the vibe up a little bit and finish on a high. So here's one we both like, Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
Yay! We are not a football family, but the whole family loved Ted Lasso. It's not really a football show. I thought it was going to be a bit football-y for me, but it's just the classic fish out of water comedy where you have Ted, the main character, as an American football coach that's basically parachuted in to manage Richmond FC, specifically so that Rebecca, one of the other main characters, can ruin the club that her ex-husband Rupert loves. Instead of Rebecca's plan working out, Ted Lasso's quirky charm and unconventional methods actually bring the club massive success. So Ted is just a legend in personal resilience, forgiveness, the power of kindness, and just being prepared to be a bit vulnerable to have healthier relationships, like what we were talking about earlier on. There it is again.
Yeah. And he has his personal struggles, doesn't he? But ultimately becomes a better father to his son and is more at peace with himself.
Yeah.
I've always thought there should be a Ted Lasso book of his wisdom, like written by the character. There's loads of unofficial books, but an official Ted Lasso book should be given to anyone who becomes a manager because he is just wonderful.
They could capitalise off of that majorly. They should give you credit for that so you can capitalise too. But not work related, just separately. It has definitely given us a Christmas tradition, Ted Lasso, because we watch the Ted Lasso Christmas episode at some point over the holidays now, every year. Yeah,
because it's just such a good,
wholesome,
feel-good episode.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's about people from all different backgrounds all sort of come together for Christmas, but it's just lovely. So what can we say we've learned from all this, Lily? What do you take away from all this stuff about the corporate world and office life?
There's a lot to unpack. For me, I just want to be a struggling small business owner that Nathan Fielder comes to visit with an outrageous plan, to be honest. But more seriously, I do think it's weird how much time we all spend at work and how fed up of it we all seem to be, only for us to come home and watch like hundreds of shows that seem to be about work. So maybe it's easier to live through someone else's on-screen workplace drama than deal with our own. Because to me, it's kind of like, this is a bit breaking the fourth wall, but it's kind of like we're in Severance and we're using the TV to switch off from our innies. What do you think? I know.
Yeah.
Get me
Yeah.
on Black Mirror.
Yeah.
I've got an idea.
Like maybe we're in the Matrix or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
It's a simulation. That's my takeaway, basically, is that I'm about to have an existential crisis.
Oh, yeah, very meta. Yeah. I mean, apart from the fact that that is all good telly, like the comedies and the dramas,
Yeah.
I think in relation to what it says about work, there's some really interesting examples of all the drama and the challenges that go on in almost any workplace. And if you just think through like what we've mentioned, you've got narcissism, corruption, politics, bureaucracy, work-life boundaries, dealing with pressure, the risk of losing everything, and the joy in creating a really positive winning culture.
Yeah.
It's got everything. I think the key thing for me in almost all of these is that one person can make a difference. The person doesn't have to be the big boss. And in fact, that person can make a very bad difference through their actions and behavior. But you can be a really positive force in the workplace.
There are probably loads of shows as well that we didn't cover that you think have a valuable lesson. So let us know by commenting on the episode on Spotify, sending us a message on SpeakPipe or LinkedIn with your suggestions, and maybe we'll revisit this topic with our round 2 sometime to go over all the new shows that we'll be getting through these recommendations. Yeah,
I bet there'll be lots more we could talk about. And if you've enjoyed the episode, please give us a 5-star rating on your app or even write a little review. That really helps the show grow.
In our next episode, we'll be talking about procrastination. We both do it, you probably do it. Why do we do it and how can we stop it? We have a special guest to help us dive into that.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Gen XZ Exchange.